What's up, guys? My name is Cobra One, and today we're going to be talking about why the AFT is failing. First, we're going to talk about why it's failing. Then we're going to talk about the old ACFT, why it was better, and my solution going forward. So first off, it was bad from the start. So back in 2019, we heard that the Army, actually when I joined in 2017, they were in experiment making it. But 2019 is when it became known, hey, this is going to replace the ACFT. My team leader, while I was assigned in the 82nd Airborne, was sent to go take a course to become an instructor and to implement it. The people that taught him said this PT test is a failure already. Statistically, at the time, a third of the Army failed the PT test. The Army is not chaptering out a third of its force. So they were either going to do one of two things: keep the old ACFT because it worked, or do what I also thought they were going to do, is lower the standards to where it's a fucking joke. The 2-mile run minimum standard was dropped so low. When I was in basic leadership course and we took the ACFT, there were dudes walking and they passed at the minimum standard. The old ACFT, the 2-mile standard, you couldn't even stop and expect to pass unless you dead sprinted. That's a fucking problem, man. And don't even get me started on the hand release push-up. So here's a hand release push-up. Start up in the front leaning rest. You go down. You pick your hands up. Push them out and make a nice T. Bring them back. Put your hands back on the ground and push up. In order to pass at the minimum standard, you only need to do 10 of those motherfuckers in 2 minutes. What the fuck? And people stand by, they're like, well, it's better than the old push-up because some people would make you go lower. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to turn sideways. This is the old standard for the ACFT push-up. In fact, when you get correctly trained in basic, this is what they make you fucking do still. Hand release ACFT push-up. You start in the front leaning rest. You go down to where your arms make 90-degree arch, or breaking the plane, meaning your elbow goes past your back, which is the plane, known as breaking the plane. Once you're here, you go up, body in one movement. Your hands can be as close as they want, as wide as they want. You couldn't pick your hand off the ground or your foot off the ground, you'd be disqualified. 3 authorized rest positions. Flex your back, sag in the middle, or flex your back with a slight bend in your knees. But if you try to stand, you're disqualified. You have to do 42 of those in 2 minutes to pass. Much higher standard than 10 hand release. Now, you also forgot to mention, when you go down and touch your chest to the ground, disqualified. Guess what you do in Ranger School commonly? Touch your chest to the ground. Guess what they try to make you do in Airborne School when they had the PT test? Touch your chest to the ground. And then when I was in basic training, there were drill sergeants that, my senior drill sergeant said, you are only going to be graded if you touch your chest to the ground. I went to drill sergeants that made us break the plane. In fact, we had one dude who wanted to go chest to ground, and one drill sergeant enforced the regulation and disqualified him. So, talking to people who served in the 80s, and I informed them of this, they said, what the fuck? You're resting on the ground. That's not the push-up. Somewhere along the way, some douchebag NCOs wanted to make the Army standard harder for some reason, which went against regulation. In fact, if you reported them at this time, you could have got them in trouble, but no one was doing it. Instead, a bunch of Joes, a bunch of people complained to higher Army and said, oh, we need to fix this. So instead of enforcing a regulation that's been in play for 40 fucking years, they create the hand release push-up. And somehow there's people who actually think it's better. And I swear to fucking God, I wonder where this generation's going sometimes. Now the leg tuck. The old PT test had sit-ups. The leg tuck, you literally hold onto a bar, tuck your knees to your elbows. The minimum was 5 when I went to BLC, then they changed it to 1. And then they had an alternative workout called the plank, where you just plank your body, basically like the front leaning rest, but you rest on your arms like this. Then the Army said, hey, we're going to do the plank now. And everyone complained, all we had to do was 1 leg tuck. Yeah, listen, lowest common denominator back in the day had to do 53 sit-ups just to stay in the Army. That still takes some type of core strength. The lowest common denominator is shitbag Joe hiding in his barracks room, shotgunning monsters and dipping and playing Call of Duty. He doesn't give a fuck. He's getting out after his 3 years and he's done. That guy may have to go to war. The Army knew to hold that dude to a standard. You want guys who want to actually max a PT test? Go to SOCOM, go to Ranger Battalion, go to a Special Forces group where they do it. Regular Army, the lowest common denominator, is going to go to the bare minimum. I don't know about you, but I'd rather the bare minimum be something that's kind of difficult than 1 repetition. And the Army figured that out, and I'm glad that they said, fuck the leg tuck, plank. 1.5 minutes. It takes some core strength to do a plank for 1.5 minutes, and it's not hard. The ACFT was implemented back in 1980 and was around till about 2020. I believe it was the longest lasting PT test the Army had since they started doing PT tests back in World War II officially. 40 years is a lot of statistics saying, hey, this PT test works. And if it was limited, guess what? Oh, well, it doesn't help you get better at rucking. Put a rucksack on. Go ruck. Oh, you want to get stronger? Hey, look. We're at the range. Why don't we pick these ammo cans up and do some overhead press? Oh, shit. That shit they did back in the 80s and 90s. You didn't need to go to the gym to stay in shape. It helps you, and it's better now. The Army's better now with gyms and calisthenic workshops, but you didn't need to go to the gym, and I'll still tell you, you don't need to. Like, if I deploy somewhere on a FOB, if I was on active duty, and there's no gym, I'm not worried. I already know what to fucking do. So, every unit is assigned an H2F person now. Our H2F guy, when I was in the 101st, was a former retired E7, and he told me something. Now, recently, Viva La Vargas went to Washington, D.C. and met the woman who's in charge of H2F for the whole Army. I'm not going to say negative things about her, but I will tell you the things this H2F guy told me. He said she sucks and she has no idea what she's doing. She has no idea how to implement fitness into a military. And on top of that, the ACFT was politically motivated by West Point cadets. While I was in Poland, I was at an MWR-10 gaming, and next to me was a female. Started talking to her, found out she's an officer, and I start telling her how I think the ACFT is stupid. And then she tells me, oh, I'm part of the reason it was implemented. In West Point, if you guys don't know this, when you're a cadet, you're required to play a sport, and everyone weightlifts. You go to the gym, just about every cadet goes to that gym and works out there. I'm from West Point, I've seen it. West Point cadets, above ROTCs, and then above even regular enlisted personnel, are already above their peers when it comes to fitness. They are athletes. So give them a PT test like that, they do well. She said, I was the one who sent the Excel spreadsheet up to Washington, D.C., which gave the Army their stats. Remember, the Army controls stats. That said, okay, green light, go, this fucking test works. Meanwhile, they implement it to the regular Army, and they're like, holy shit, a third of the Army failed. West Point cadets have to do a lot of shit to get into West Point. Alright, congressional approval on top of that. They want to stay in West Point, they got to stay fit. You will never see a fat cadet at West Point. And for some reason, it used to be cadets were below privates. Now all of a sudden, when you go to West Point, they're told West Point cadets are already officers. And for some reason, West Point cadets, who are, in my opinion, literally dumber than fucking privates, are sending shit to Washington, D.C. to make decisions for the Army when they're not even fucking commissioned yet. What the fuck's going on? Politically motivating stuff for a lethal military has never worked out. Look at the ACU, for example. Now, the test has been changing. They got rid of the ball throw. Sprint drag carry is an amazing event. That's my favorite event to do in the PT test. That's a smoker in itself. And then to do a 2-mile run afterwards is insane. But still, the minimum standard to pass is too low. One might say raise the standard. Well, we've raised the standard. A third of the Army failed. My solution here is to look to history. And I think people aren't doing that. And I don't know why. We have the technology. You can look it up on your phone. You can Google it. Fuck, go to a VFW post and go see an old non-bat. Go see some old guys that served in the 80s and 90s. There's going to be a retired D9 there that knows what the fuck he's talking about, and they'll tell you what works. Now, what I mean by using what works, let's look to the United States Marine Corps. Here's their PT test. They have two. One semi-annually, one annually. The Marine fitness test involved pull-ups, crunches, and a 3-mile run. And then they had a multi-event PT test, which I believe inspired the Army's ACFT. But good old Army fashion, they had to make a one PT test that's going to outdo the Marine Corps. And instead they made some bullshit that made the Army a fucking laughingstock. Here's how the Marine Corps improved their PT test. They said, hey, crunches aren't working. It just burns your abs and it's not really a testament to core strength. But the plank is. So let's replace it with plank. So the Marine Corps listened to fitness experts while also understanding how to apply this into a military unit. This is their new PT test. Pull-ups, plank, and a 3-mile run. And then they had their annual combat fitness test. So here's my solution. Make the ACFT annual, all right? I don't mind keeping the hand release push-ups for an annual PT test. I get it. You're physically picking your body off the ground, helps you with body armor. I argue I'd never needed an exercise to learn how to get up in body armor. I just got up in body armor when I was doing IMTs. I don't know why they thought that we needed this. And let's do this. This is my challenge for you leaders, team leaders, squad leaders. Here's a mock PT test that you guys can make. Hold the old ACFT standards. Push-ups. 42 push-ups in 2 minutes to pass. 71 to max. Plank, current standard for the ACFT. Take that, 1.5 minutes to pass in 60 points, 3:30 and some change to max. And then the 2-mile run from the old ACFT standard, 15:54 for minimum, maximum 13 minutes. Take all those standards I gave you, push up, plank, 2-mile run. Experiment with your guys. See how well that test works and implement it. And hopefully, I think that would be a good solution. Implement that semi-annually and have the ACFT annually. Implement both PT tests, and I think that would make us more lethal. And then on top of that, if we deploy somewhere where there's a fucking beaver fit, you can't put a beaver fit, guess what? Well, you don't need shit to do the 3 of them PT tests now. And then make it mandatory. All right, if you're deployed, you don't have to do an ACFT because it's to prepare you for combat. Or the AFT now, my mistake. And then when you're deployed, just do the semi-annual PT test when applicable. Easy. That's my challenge for you guys. That's my take on the AFT. I saw it implement, and I saw a lower quality of soldier. There were people that couldn't pass the APFT that were passing the ACFT. I saw it at Fort Campbell. Okay, there were soldiers, because back then the ACFT was new, so they didn't have beaver fits. So the instructors in charge of CalSU, which is Fort Campbell's reception, said, hey, we're going to have you guys do an APFT so that we have something to send to your unit that says what you can do. All these new soldiers back in 2021 that only took the ACFT, took this PT test. I remember I talked to one dude, he did 25 push-ups, couldn't do more. He did 30 sit-ups, couldn't do more, and they couldn't run the 2-mile standard. Had those guys gone through basic training back in 2017 when I went through, they wouldn't even be in the fucking Army. Stop politically motivating shit to make yourselves look good. Use what fucking works before you guys do some catastrophe like the ACU uniform. That was politically motivated. Multicam came out the same year. That's my tank. Thanks for listening to my rant. Team leader, squad leaders, platoon sergeants, I encourage you. I challenge you. See if this works. If you have a solution for a new PT test, let me know in the comments below. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to my rant. I will see you in the next one.